We interrupt this regular broadcast for a breaking news report. Switchboards are lighting up in Braxton County. Residents are being warned to stay inside. Initial reports say that an unknown creature was spotted on Old Bailey Fisher Farm. A caustic odor has blanketed the area, and it is said that it can cause individuals to become ill. Again, sheriff officials are cautioning residents to avoid the area, and urge all to take precautions to avoid this potential Flatwoods Monster.
Welcome to the dark side, my fellow wanderers. Today we travel to the hills of West Virginia to study the case of the Flatwoods Monster and the sensational fallout of its story. The idea to look into the Flatwoods Monster came from a commenter on one of the channel's very first videos, so thank you to that person. I want to make clear that while I do extensive research into all the topics covered on this channel, I am by no means an expert or seasoned researcher when it comes to topics regarding UFOs and UAPs. As many of you probably know or have gathered from watching my videos and other creators in similar genres, information varies greatly as cases get older and when they are covered or picked up by mainstream outlets. This is especially true in the case of UFOs or UAPs. I know everyone has their opinions, and we all rightfully can have different perspectives on these types of cases. All of this is to say that there may be information which you know about this case that won't be discussed in this video. This is mostly done for time and sake of brevity. If there's an aspect of this case that I don't cover in this video and you would like me to look into, please feel free to let me know by using the link in the description down below. This video will have a follow-up as there is much information I wanted to cover that I just could not fit into one video alone. With that being said, let's explore the case of the Flatwoods Monster. On the night of September 12, 1952, balls of light and fire streaked across the skies of several states. The Hinton Daily News recounted the night, detailing how calls and reports flooded newspapers, government offices, and police. In Washington, D.C., anxious residents worried about another UFO siege, while in Harrisonburg, Virginia, a caller mentioned a cigar-shaped object with trailing blue-green flames. Others reported airplanes falling from the skies, and 3 commercial pilots informed the Civil Aeronautics Administration of meteor-like objects passing by their planes, with one almost hitting an aircraft. While switchboards continued to light up across Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, and Virginia, 2 brothers and their friend were playing in the Flatwoods schoolyard when they saw a bright object flash across the sky and land on Bailey Fisher Farm. Freddie May, 14, his younger brother Edward, 13, and Tommy Heyer, 10, went to investigate, stopping at the May home, which was on the way. From there they were joined by their mother, Kathleen May, a Flatwoods beautician, who called upon Eugene Lemon, a West Virginia National Guardsman. By the time they neared the landing location, the group had grown to include Neil Nunley, Ronnie Schaefer, and a dog. When they reached the top of the hill, they observed a pulsing red light. When Lemon scanned the area with his flashlight, a 7-foot-tall metallic creature was illuminated. The creature seemed to levitate and glide towards them while making a hissing sound, and a strange mist blanketed the area, causing some to suffer from throat irritation, nausea, and vomiting. Upon seeing the monster, the group ran, leaving the green-faced, red-eyed creature on the hill. No one could have been prepared for what would happen next. Over the next few days and weeks, the story took over headlines across the nation, with each one more sensational than the last. Braxton County residents report giant red monster. 7 people see red-faced monster. Beast 17 feet tall with blood-red face claimed sighted in West Virginia. Fire-breathing monster reported. Titles such as these were printed in numerous newspapers with descriptions detailing the group's encounter. As word spread, the details of the encounter, whether by miscommunication, misinterpretation, or conscious effort, changed with each new retelling. The monster that was said to originally be 7 to 10 feet in height grew to anywhere from 7 to 20 feet. On September 14th, 2 days after the creature's landing, the Long Beach Independent published an article relaying information that the monster had grown to 17 feet in the span of 24 hours, and supposedly quoted Miss May saying, "There was an overpowering gaseous smell that burned my nostrils and made me sick. In each new article about the Flatwoods Monster, its description was slightly altered. The common elements shared between most descriptions are the monster's metallic composition, red eyes or face, green body, along with the association of hissing noises and caustic gas. The most distinct feature of this monster was said to be its spade-shaped hood that was behind its head. The Long Beach Independent also reported that May and Lemon described the creature as having the shape of a man, blood-red face, bright green body, and protruding eyes, with its hands forward, and that it gave off an eerie light. Although subsequent articles and research published established that May and Lemon were not sure if the creature actually had arms at all. There was a shield of sorts in the shape of an ace of spade behind it, and it wore what looked like a pleated metallic skirt. The Charleston, West Virginia Gazette published an article detailing the events of that night and reporting that among those notified of the monster's landing were the police and A. Lee Stewart of the Braxton Democrat paper. He spoke with the witnesses who he said were so fearful that they were trembling, and one boy was close to collapsing. Stewart and several others went to the location and reported that while there was no monster, there was a sickening burnt metallic odor and that the grass seemed to be trampled down. On the 15th, the Charleston Gazette would publish a follow-up article giving more context to the events. The 6 other witnesses gave less elaborate descriptions, but swore to state police officers and to Sutton publisher A. Lee Stewart that they indeed had seen the thing. Only Lemon could gather enough courage to accompany a shotgun-armed posse back to the scene Friday night, and he, said Stewart, was visibly frightened. Mrs. May went back to the scene today and saw the footprints. She, as well as Stewart, described them as skid-like depressions in the hillside brush, about 6 or 8 feet apart. The sickening, piercing odor, which the witnesses said accompanied the monster's appearance Friday, was still slightly in evidence, Mrs. May said. She also pointed out that she had acquired some grease or oil stains on her white beautician's uniform while in the area today. Searchers could find no other evidence of a visit by the phantom. That same day, the Hinton Daily News would publish May's description of the creature being a fire-breathing, 10-foot-tall monster with a bright green body and blood-red face that duck-walked towards the group, rather than the aforementioned levitating. It looked like Frankenstein, she said. It could not have been human. Over 10 newspapers across various states would republish the Hinton Daily News's September 15th article, further spreading the story. Just a day later, on September 16th, the Hinton Daily News would publish another article, this time reporting the monster as gas-breathing instead of fire-breathing. The article details that on September 12th, the monster may have moved on from the Flatwoods and Sutton areas, as police became inundated with calls from residents of Wheeling, West Virginia, which is nearly a 2.5 to 3 hour drive north of Flatwoods. Residents of the Vineyard Housing Project called to confirm if the reports out of Flatwoods were true. The Wheeling Intelligencer newspaper also received numerous calls to confirm the sighting of a 10-foot-tall monster from another world. One person even asked if the badly burnt body of a woman being found in the Vineyard Hill area was true, along with a report of an officer sustaining mystery burns to the arms. Police blamed all the calls and reports on the imagination of residents, and one officer said that the only green-eyed monster he ever saw was a jealous woman. Although the police attempted to quash any fears, the news of the monster continued to circulate. On September 25th, a little over a week after the Flatwoods Monster encounter, the Miami News described the creature as a 12-foot-tall glowing green monster seen with a luminous cone. It was some type of machine like a diving bell, the article stated. The paper would go on to give more details surrounding the encounter in question, including that a fleet of pear-shaped objects glowing dull red to white crashed in Braxton County, which Flatwoods is located in. The objects were said to have flown in a formation less than 1,000 feet above the ground. Many were said to have seen the objects, and a few were almost struck. The paper relayed that the crash sites of 3 of the objects were known, and all had been left with residual smell and nothing but white powder, which was sent off to Charleston for analysis. One of the landing sites still needed to be investigated at the time of the article's publication, and another required additional efforts due to it being a densely wooded and uninhabited area. The group consisting of Miss May, Lemon, and the boys were questioned separately and together for 2 days, and were found to not be lying about what they thought they had witnessed. Sketches depicting the creature had been made and sent off to Washington, though the Air Force decided not to investigate. Some questioned that decision, seeing as this encounter was considered more concrete than other reports of UFO or UAP events within the recent past. Some believe that the event preceding the Flatwoods Monster encounter was not in fact meteors based on the travel of the objects, which was horizontal, and that they maneuvered around hills, stopped in midair, and landed vertically. This does, however, contradict other reports that the objects crashed down rather than landed. Whatever the case, many pointed to the Air Force's own insinuation that there were unexplainable air phenomena occurring around the United States and other countries with its official release and acknowledgement of Project Saucer. Project Saucer, officially known as Project Sign, was a government-run operation that identified and analyzed reports of aerial incidents of unknown origin. This project was in effect until 1948, and although short-lived, it still caused a major impact, and for some would confirm their long-held suspicions when Project Sign was made public in 1950. The 1940s and 50s were a turbulent time for American citizens. With the Air Force and government monitoring the skies for potential enemy air raids, the looming anxiety over the atomic bomb, and increasing paranoia and disillusion, most were on edge, and eyes were on the sky. In 1952, West Virginia, like many of the states around the U.S., was touched by the anxiety and heartbreak of the 40s and 50s wartime era. Specifically, Braxton County, which had 4 of its young men who were 21 or younger, killed among the thousands that also perished while being stationed overseas during the Korean War. These incidents only added to the feelings of disillusion and need for distraction from the anguishing reality of life at that time. Reports of weird objects in the sky were not necessarily new in the 50s, as there was an uptick in sightings during the 1940s, but they still brought about high levels of curiosity, fear, and excitement, though some found themselves regretting their own discoveries and subsequent reporting. One of these individuals was W.W. Brazel, who the Daily Tribune reported as having found the nation's first flying disc. Brazel and his discovery would become an integral part of what would later be known as the Roswell incident, forever tying him to history. But in 1947, Brazel would ultimately say he was sorry that he even said anything. And while some held similar sentiments to him when choosing to report incidents they witnessed or items they found, many still went on to report the strange things they had seen. Those instances were detailed within the papers of Project Sign. From the unclassified documents, it is known that Project Sign was initiated by the Technical Intelligence Division, Air Materiel Command on January 22, 1948. The report itself was meant to present the status of work being accomplished on Project Sign, to summarize the data collected on sightings of unidentified aerial objects, to review the methods and reasonings applied in the evaluation of the data, and to present the results so far obtained from the study of data available. Sign's results were based on the data derived from reports of 243 domestic and 30 foreign incidents. The study placed objects into 4 categories: flying discs, meaning very low aspect ratio aircraft, torpedo or cigar-shaped bodies with no wings or fins visible in flight, spherical or balloon-shaped objects, and lastly, balls of light. About 20% of the incidents were identified as conventional aerial objects, while it was expected that other incidents still being examined would and could be attributed to simple things such as weather balloons, meteors, birds, and test devices. In its conclusion, Project Sign found that no definitive or conclusive evidence is yet available that would prove or disprove the existence of these unidentified objects as real aircraft of unknown and unconventional configuration. It is unlikely that positive proof of their existence will be obtained without examination of the remains of crashed objects. Proof of non-existence is equally impossible to obtain unless a reasonable and convincing explanation is determined for each incident. Though many of the sightings came from reliable witnesses, the report emphasizes the unsatisfactory characteristics of the incidents, which include time under observation, distance from observer, vagueness of description or photographs, inconsistencies between individual observers, and lack of descriptive data, all of which hindered any concrete conclusions. The report stresses that examination of events is necessary for military intelligence agencies and that such sightings are inevitable, and under wartime conditions, rapid and convincing solutions of such occurrences are necessary to maintain morale of military and civilian personnel. In its recommendations, the Project Sign report finalizes that future minimal activity should be carried out to record, summarize, and evaluate data of future reported sightings, and investigations of these instances should be handled on a routine basis. There was also importance placed on obtaining more factual evidence such as photographs, physical evidence, radar sightings, and data on size and shape of the objects. It further lays out that personnel sighting such objects should engage the assistance of others when possible to get more definitive data. For example, military pilots should notify neighboring bases by radio of presence and direction of flight of an unidentified object so that other observers in flight or on the ground could assist in its identification. Although Project Sign ended, those minimal activities were reorganized and flowed into Project Grudge, a program with similar goals. Grudge began in February of 1949 and was also short-lived, being shut down around December of that same year. There are indications that the operation continued in a lesser capacity for several years following its official end. Off the heels of Projects Sign and Grudge came one of the most well-known and discussed government operations in the field, Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book took the findings, reports, and data from the previous projects and newly gained information on current incidents to study and catalog each one. Reports and investigations of unknown incidents were completed in an extensively detailed manner, more so than any other operation in the past. The project was officially terminated on December 17, 1969, and with it, the investigation into these unidentified objects. The Project Blue Book report stated that as a result of these investigations and studies, and experience gained from investigating UFO reports since 1948, the conclusions of Project Blue Book are: 1. No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security. 2. There has been no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. And 3. There has been no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial vehicles. The total number of sightings from 1947 to 1969 totaled 12,618, with 701 sightings remaining unidentified. Documented sightings occurred across the United States and many other countries, including incidences witnessed in Peru, Japan, Spain, and Algeria. Examining the records dating from September 9th to the 16th of 1952, there were numerous sightings cataloged. On the 12th of September, the date the Flatwoods Monster was seen, there were 11 events recorded. The incident list and each associated report detail card confirms some of what was published by news outlets after the Flatwoods incident. Events were reported from multiple witnesses, including those that were formally named or labeled as civilian or military personnel. Of the events recorded, 2 were identified as aircraft, 1 was unidentifiable in Maryland, 2 could not be fully recorded as their incident record cards were missing, and 6 were classified as meteor events, including the one in Flatwoods, West Virginia. Those 6 events correspond with the states that saw brilliant streaks of light, cigar-shaped objects, and balls of fire on the night the Flatwoods Monster touched down. Examining the Flatwood incident card, the time specified is 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which corresponds with other archival information found surrounding the event. The source indicated it as a civilian report, and the comment section reads, "The West Virginia Monster so-called. Actually, the object was the well-known Washington area meteor of September 12th, landing near Flatwoods, West Virginia. Have confirmation of an astronomy club from Akron, Ohio." The fact sheet associated with the card shows that the incident is cataloged as a fireball. It also indicates the object's direction and angle of travel, which was approximately 30 degrees from horizontal. It goes on to specify that around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a brilliant greenish-white object in the shape of an egg, having a smaller radius at the front, was observed for about 5 to 6 seconds. It was assumed to have passed over Cumberland, Maryland, which was also a location of meteor sightings that night before making its way to Flatwoods. The records of Blue Book clearly ascribe the event as a meteor, but those outside of the government's discretion thought otherwise. News of the Flatwoods Monster continued to spread, gaining more and more national attention. The story would ultimately be ranked number 11 for the news story of the year. Mrs. May and Eugene Lemon were apparently invited to New York to be interviewed about their shared experience on the broadcast of CBS's We the People television show. On the night of the encounter, the local sheriff searched the area but saw, smelled, and heard nothing. While the police and sheriff laughed off the sighting, calls, and reports as imaginative hysteria, others were not so quick to dismiss the sighting. In the hopes of uncovering what truly happened that night in Flatwoods, several investigators, local and out of state, descended on the area in the following days, weeks, and months. Several theories were floated for what the monster could have been: a visitor from another world, a monster of one's own imagination, and even an owl. But it has been said that even with all the words that have been written and spoken, the story has not been explained, and in all probability, never will. Perhaps that is true. Or maybe, even with all the possibilities and theories presented, there will never be an answer that satisfies those that seek them out in regards to this case. Maybe the sensationalism of the story outweighs the sensible mind. Or maybe the possibility of some unexplainable being touching down in Flatwoods several decades ago is just too great, too out of the norm that people dismiss it altogether. Whatever the true answer, there are some who believe and wait for the return of the Phantom of Flatwoods.